blessed with natural wealth such as hydrocarbons, precious minerals, arable land, yet the second most impoverished nation in the European Union. Romania's ill fortune stems from several factors. In the last century, the nation was affected by 2 world wars and a vicious communist dictatorship that lasted decades, while even earlier in its history, the country was surrounded by large expansionist powers. These events left a deep impression on the geopolitics of Romania. I'm your host Shivan and welcome to Caspian Report. On the western shore of the Black Sea and north of the Balkan Peninsula sits Romania. Its single most defining geographic feature are the Carpathian Mountains. Rugged, vast, and rich in wildlife, forests, and minerals, the Arc of the Carpathians has historically served as a barrier against marching armies. Even with modern weaponry, the mountains offer a strategic depth in an otherwise flat neighborhood, much like a speed bump in the middle of a highway. Historically, the mountainous range offered the locals shelter from foreign invaders. It was in the Carpathians that the Dacian state emerged, and later Roman Dacia established its capitals. This explains why Romania is distinctly different in language, customs, and traditions from its Slavic neighbors. One can therefore argue that the Carpathians are the backbone of Romania. Yet, as important as the Carpathians are in defense and national identity, they also divide Romania into 3 distinct entities: Moldavia, Wallachia, and Transylvania. The historical rivalry between these 3 regions, invigorated by the fixed terrain, was the most testing obstruction in the unification of Romania. It wasn't until the middle of the 19th century when Wallachia and part of Moldavia unified into the new Romanian nation-state, with Transylvania becoming part of the country following the outcome of World War I. Since then, there have been many minor territorial adjustments as the borders were continuously redrawn with each passing conflict. But Moldavia, Wallachia, and Transylvania make up the bulk of what is modern Romania. The second most striking feature is the Danube River, which flows across the southern grasslands and turns the area into a large arable land known as the Wallachian Plain. It is here that one finds the capital, Bucharest, and many other cities along the banks of the Danube. Although Romania's population is evenly spread, the political and commercial concentration in the Wallachian Plain makes it the heartland of the country. Due to its proximity to the Balkans, the development of Wallachia was shaped by South Europe as well as the Ottoman Empire. Current relations with Serbia, Bulgaria, and Turkey are favorable owing to the distance and clear demarcation of the Danube. Transylvania and Moldavia have their own distinct functions within the state as well. The highlands of Transylvania are linked to Central Europe, where the Catholic faith and the Austrian-Hungarian influences remain traceable today. Relations with Hungary are more complicated since Transylvania is home to a large ethnic Hungarian community and was under on and off Hungarian control from the 10th century until World War I. Ordinarily, this would turn the area into a powder keg, but fortunately membership within the European Union has rendered the ethnic territorial dispute almost non-existent. Moldavia, meanwhile, plays an important cultural role and was influenced by East European factors such as the Orthodox faith and the Russian Empire. But the conflict in Transnistria has a direct bearing on the populations of Moldova and Romania. More on this in a few minutes. Seen in this light, Romania sits at the fringe borders of South, East, and Central Europe. It is no coincidence, therefore, that the country has long acted as a crossing point for expansionist kingdoms and at times an essential buffer against such powers. Since the turn of the 20th century, however, Romania has gravitated towards Central Europe as commercial opportunities facilitated with markets to the west thanks to the Danube River. Today, about 70% of Romanian exports go to the members of the European Union. That makes Bucharest susceptible to changes in Brussels. Another way of looking at the geopolitics of Romania is that the nation sits between the conflict spaces of Yugoslavia and those of the former Soviet Union. So, compared to its environment, Romania is an oasis of stability. and that stability makes Bucharest a favorite for many outside powers seeking for a regional partner. The third element defining Romania's geography is the Black Sea. The coastal region, with the deep water port of Constanța, is a geo-economic hub that links the markets of Central and East Europe with Asia through road, rail, and air. However, whenever there is an easy access for trade, there is also an opening for conquest. Centuries ago, the Ottomans used the navigable Danube to sail their galleys right into the heart of Wallachia and disturb the logistics, which left the southern frontier open for invasion. That's how the Ottoman Empire subjugated the Romanian states, and this strategic vulnerability exists to this day. At times the greatest threat came from the Turks, and at times it came from the Russians. Whenever one power formed a danger, Romania allied with the other to maintain a balance of power in the Black Sea. As such, Romanian policymakers consider Russia and Turkey as their historical frenemies, both friends and enemies at the same time. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union in the 1990s, that equation has changed only slightly. The Kremlin seeks to regain its lost influence by expanding westward, while the White House has amplified its regional commitments. For instance, Poland checks Russia in the European plain, Turkey contains the Russians in the Black Sea, while Bucharest blocks expansion in the Balkans. This US-backed containment belt is a shared interest of the participant nations. Another consideration for Romania is the turmoil in neighboring Ukraine. Bucharest not only has a lengthy border with Kiev, but is also deeply tied to the area. The Republic of Moldova, which is ethnically Romanian, has historically acted as a battleground between the Romanian states and Russia. In the 1990s, the two Romanian countries sought to reunify their territories, only to be cut short by geopolitics. Stalin crafted the borders of Moldova in such fashion that it could have no political will of its own. Firstly, after establishing Soviet Moldova, the area north of Bessarabia and North Bukovina were granted to Soviet Ukraine as a gift. Secondly, the coastline of southern Bessarabia was also transferred to Ukraine. This was a critical change because it turned Moldova into a landlocked country and dismembered its access to the wealthy ports of the Danube. Thirdly, in exchange for these territorial concessions, Moldova received the region of Transnistria. However, this was more of a burden than a gift, since Transnistria had a Russian ethnic majority which ensured Moscow's influence. Since these calculated changes, Moldova has been unable to escape the Kremlin's grip, and policymakers in Bucharest have no interest in getting involved in the quagmire. Should the Romanians pursue reunification with Moldova regardless, it would place Bucharest on a collision course with Kiev as well as Moscow. With so many variable factors beyond its control, Bucharest has had to master the art of realist geopolitics. As a result, the state experimented with various types of governance while balancing between foreign powers. After World War II, Romania went from a monarchy to communist dictatorship until finally arriving at its current democratic state. However, like many East European nations, the communist bureaucracy and civil servants merely reinvented themselves in the democratic framework while maintaining the power structure. As such, much like communist planned economics, the government still dominates the nationwide economic life, and with that inevitably comes corruption, the decay of state institutions, and a plunge in industrial output. This is why Romania, despite being rich in natural resources such as crude oil, natural gas, hydropower, uranium, nickel, copper, etc., lacks the proper infrastructure to exploit its riches. On paper, Romania should have been a wealthy state, not to mention a regional conduit for energy. Unfortunately, corruption is so endemic that it feeds traits like poor infrastructure, tax avoidance, brain drain, etc., all leading to a drop in industrial and economic capacity. More importantly, Romania is a long way from rectifying this dilemma given that its population is dropping rapidly. Since its peak in the 1990s, the population fell from 23 million to 19 million in 2019, a number that will decline to 15 million by 2050, and even further drop to 10 million by the end of the century. Such a stern demographic decline will have consequences for every segment of the Romanian state. Its military, diplomatic, and economic standings will be affected by it. All things considered, as a crossing point between Central, East, and South Europe, Romania has its fair share of geopolitical objectives. Foremost, the Carpathians divide the country in three parts, and Bucharest must maintain unity against influences from abroad. One way to enhance the integrity of the state, and this is the second objective, is by improving public administration by addressing grievances such as corruption, infrastructure, taxation, education, etc. Currently, Bucharest loses about $16 billion annually due to corruption. That's money that could have been invested anywhere else to unify the state. The third objective, by enhancing its public administration, output in crude oil and natural gas is likely to build up. Increased energy output can be applied to balance off Russia's exports, which is Romania's ticket to greater political say. Next, the Danube is a highway for commerce, but also an entry point into the heartland. And since Romania lacks a capable navy, it must ally with a naval power that can guarantee its existence against a dominant Black Sea power, with emphasis on the balance between Turkey and Russia. The fifth objective is to maintain membership in both the EU and NATO, which freezes ethnic disputes and security threats from the west and south. East Romania, however, is exposed to the turmoil in Ukraine, Russia's westward pressure, the pro-Russian separatists in Transnistria, and reunification with Moldova. So in the east, the margin for error is small, and the next objective here is to maintain the stalemate with Russia, at least until better opportunities are presented. The final goal for the country is to prepare for the irreversible demographic decline. That can mean opening the borders for skilled immigrants, or investing in technology and automation, or a combination of the two. Either way, demographic decline, along with the previously mentioned goals, determine the geopolitics of Romania. I've been your host Shirvan from Caspian Report. Special thanks to Nikolai for helping me with the research for this report. If you want to help us to produce more original content like this, please consider joining our community on Patreon. For more information, check out the link in the description. Either way, thank you for your time, and Sahol.